Hello everyone, thank you very much for joining us today. My name's Dean Lewis and we're going to be covering as part of this Code Connect session which is attached to VMworld 2021, how to automate your HCX environment and migrations using PowerCLI. I'm Dean Lewis, I'm a Cloud Solutions Architect here at VMware based in the UK, and I also kind of have a second role as an ambassador for the office of the CTO as well, which means I connect the field back to our R&D and engineering units as well. Get in touch with me via Twitter at SaintDLA, and you can also find me blogging at veducate.co.uk.
Hey everyone, my name's Bilal. I'm a customer success cloud architect at VMware. I've worked at VMware for about 3 years now, give or take. I started in professional services as a senior consultant with a specialty in migrations and VMware HCX, which leads nicely into this presentation. Now, you can reach out to me on Twitter on that handle and that blog, vmusketeers.com, where it's a bunch of us in the community to blog about our various mishaps and triumphs in IT. Some key things to know about me: my favorite color is orange, big Batman fan and a big Nando's fan. And I'm all about making life as easy as possible. It's stressful enough as it is, so why make it any harder than you need to be? And that's why we're going to script a lot of these migrations. So the agenda, I'm going to set the scene, why you want to use HCX, what makes it a great tool, and what are the benefits for you as a customer in using it. Then we're going to go through a basic customer challenge, very common, and then a high-level solution, how you deal with that kind of challenge. And then if the demo gods are on our side, we're going to do a live demo where we talk through the script that we're going to use, what it does, the key information you need to provide to it, and why it's going to be beneficial for you. And then at the end, we're going to provide some further information and links where you can go through if you want to delve into it in any more detail. So let's set the scene, right? HCX has been designed from the ground up to help you exit your legacy infrastructure into a new, fancy, shiny cloud infrastructure. And that cloud infrastructure could be your own vSphere environment that you're standing up yourself on the latest version of vSphere. It could be VMware Cloud Foundation. It could be VMware Cloud on AWS, on AVS, on Google Cloud VMware Engine. All viable options. You can mix and match however you want. HCX will help you move your VMs from your legacy environment into this new environment. And it helps mitigate a lot of the issues you come across, right? Old apps, you don't know who owns them. You don't know if the IP is hard-coded anyway. You don't know you need to keep the MAC address. You can't turn the VM off. All classic scenarios, HCX helps you with that. You want to move over 200 VMs at a time with a short amount of downtime? Perfect. You want to move one at a time with zero downtime? You can do that as well. You want to keep the IP address? We can stretch the networks, help you do that. You want to upgrade the hardware? Fine. You want to upgrade tools? Fine. You don't want to upgrade any of that? That's fine as well. It gives you that flexibility to mix and match however your app owners and your business needs to get your VMs into the cloud. Because it's great buying the infrastructure from VMware, but if you're not using it, you're not winning, and we want you to win. So if you're using it and you're using HCX to do it, everybody's happy and everybody's winning, right? And that can only be a good thing for all of us involved.
Okay, so what is the customer challenge that we're looking to overcome today then? So we understand that HCX is a way or a tool for us to migrate from our on-premise data centers into other data centers. They can still be controlled, managed and deployed by ourselves. We could deploy into a VMware on a public cloud type data center. We could even use HCX to move into another managed service provider's data center as well if we've got the right connectivity and architecture in place as well. So typically what we see with the customer challenge, we're replicating hundreds of VMs, maybe even thousands of VMs. And HCX makes that very easy. And it's all very cool, but having to do that in the GUI can be time consuming and can also still be prone to that human error as well. So the way around this, and working on the experience that Bilal's had out there in the field doing this with customers, is we can use PowerCLI, which has an available module to interact with HCX itself. It allows us the ability to kick off the syncing of migrations quickly and efficiently, so we can target our virtual machines, add them to migrations in HCX, and then we can also kick them off as well, which we'll show you in the live demo itself. And let's be honest, we want to really take away some of them things where you have to click around the GUI as well. As a high-level solution, We have a PowerCLI script that's going to use a pre-populated CSV file, which has got all the information that we need. So the virtual machines that we want to target for the migration, the details of where they're currently sat, the details of what they're going to look like when they're deployed into our VMware Cloud and AWS environment. So which data store do they need to go to, what network port group do they need to go to, and so forth. And as Bilal said, there's other options there as well. Do we want to upgrade hardware, the VM hardware? Do we want to upgrade VMware tools? Our script is going to allow you to prep and test before the actual migration event. So we're going to connect to our HCX source and destination sites. We're going to get the virtual machine info from the HCX database, so the inventory of HCX itself. We're going to set that destination compute. We're going to create the network mappings from source and destination. And then finally, the most important bit, we're going to create that HCX migration plan itself. Okay, so great news for a Code Connect session. That's enough slides. So I'm going to stop sharing now. We're going to go into Bilal's environment and we're going to start looking at this in real time.
You should be able to see my screen now, right? So let's have a quick overview of HCX in general through the web interface, just to quick get your bearings. You get a standard dashboard, which tells you what you're connecting from and what you're going to. As you can see, I have two. I have a nested environment, and I also have VMware Cloud and AWS environment as well. And I can migrate to and from them as I see fit, right? So if you go to the migration window here, I've got one syncing at the moment, which we will use later. But let's say you had to do 200 VMs. Are you really going to go click this, wait for this to load, and then do all these one by one? You could do if you wanted to, but you're going to get a lot of repetitive strain injury from that, right? There are better ways to do it, and we're going to talk about that now.
So I guess, Bilal, in this interface then, HCX gives us the ability to do bulk migrations. That's migrating multiple virtual machines at the same time across. But the issue here with the GUI is we can't bulk create a migration all at once for these virtual machines. It's very time consuming in the UI. The bulk migration feature essentially is the move of the VMs themselves once you've put these settings in place.
Absolutely right. You've got to define what data store you want to go to. You can kind of, if you do the master settings up here, it will cascade them through. But if you want to make any fine tuning adjustments or anything like that, or you make an error, HCX is only as good as the information you give it. You pick the wrong network or whatever, it's going to migrate them anyway, right? So scripting it and all that just makes life a lot easier. You can do a lot of checks before actually having to configure anything. So based on that, then let's have a look at the script, right? So I blogged about this script and everything. Dean helped me fine tune it and everything as well. But let's just work through it kind of line by line. So first thing you're going to do is schedule your migration event. How long is it going to run for and when is it going to run? So here, by definition, I've set the start time to be 12 days from the current event, and it's going to last until the 15th day. So about 3 days or so, yeah? Right, and the reason for that is it's completely arbitrary, because you're just setting it to get the replications going. And once they're going, they will sync in the background every 2 hours, ready for whenever you want to cut over. Because I've worked with customers and they've said, oh yeah, I want to migrate next Saturday. Okay, that's fine. But if you set HCX now to next Saturday, if you have any delays or anything and you forget to update this time, HCX is just going to start cutting over and you lose that bit of control and it's not going to look good. But you set an arbitrary time 2 weeks in advance, it will just keep syncing and then you can adjust when you're ready to go and you can cut over the VMs you want at any given time. So it gives you that margin for error. And I'm very much about margin for error, especially for stuff like this, because app owners can get very angry very quickly if you get it wrong, right? So line number 4, you connect to your legacy HCX manager on your legacy side. Any migration you do, even if it's reverse from cloud back to your legacy side, you always configure your migrations from the legacy manager. Then you're going to go to the HCX manager and you're going to find out what your source site is, what the VCSA is called. Then you're going to find out what the destination site is. And you do that by pulling the source manager, and then you're going to find the SDDC for my VMC instance.
So
And
here
then
at this point, Bilal, we're always connecting to the same primary HCX manager for this
correct.
script.
That is correct, yes. Some people make a mistake of trying to log into the cloud manager and trying to do the migration from there. There are certain instances where that will work, but when you're migrating to and from your legacy environment, the HCX connector is the one where you do all your configuration from. Now, We're going to talk about the CSV because, as you can see here, we're going to import it. And I would do if my mouse decided to work. There we go. And you can see line 9 there. So as you can see here, I've got 3 test VMs, and the CSV is incredibly simple. You've got the VM name, the destination vCenter folder, the destination cluster or host is going to go to, the data store is going to go to the destination, the source network is coming from, and the destination network is going to. This is how HCX does its mappings, kind of similar to the way SRM does its mappings if you ever used SRM. And then when you look through, we've got a for each that for every one, it will create a migration event for. So here it gets a destination folder, destination compute, data store, source network, destination network. It creates a mapping. So HCX knows that anything in that network, source network goes to this destination network. Then it configures a migration. And here you can set all sorts of variables. Do you want what type of disk provisioning type do you want? Do you want to upgrade tools? Do you want to remove ISOs? Do you want to force the VM off if tools can't shut it down? Retain MAC, upgrade hardware. Now, upgrading hardware is something that you should use with a bit of caution because it will upgrade the hardware to the latest version available at the destination. And if you need to roll back, you're not going to be able to, right? Because we all know you can upgrade hardware levels, but you can't downgrade officially. So bear that in mind, right? So some customers, I say, don't upgrade the hardware, do it as a post-action event when you're happy with everything in the cloud. And it could be a few days after, it could be a few hours after, right? Just arrange for that to happen. So we've talked through that script now. We've talked through the CSV. So shall we run it and see how it goes? Right. So I'm going to run this. It's going to ask for my credentials, right?
So obviously running this script, it's collecting a lot of information there, and it's going to be taking some time to actually do that. So why don't we actually talk around some of the challenges when we created this script? For those of you that use PowerShell today, you'll kind of realize this is quite simple. We're just using some of the commandlets that are available within the PowerCLI module. The first thing to kind of understand is the dependencies that are needed to actually create a HCX migration. So some of those things that Bilal's already talked about. We need to get the time, the start date and the end time. We can change that start time and end time after the HCX migration's been completed as well. And Bilal, if we get enough time in here, is going to show you how to do that. So actually we could use PowerCLI to kick off an actual live migration now. So we're going to cut over that VM into our cloud instance. As Bilal mentioned, you've got to understand where we're connecting to. So that HCX server, we connect to the primary server itself. We then have to understand which is our source and our destination sites that we're going to be connecting to, and then of course how we're going to bring that data in. So we're just using a very simple CSV file from here. Some of the problems that we had personally when we were creating this script was understanding how the inventory works. So when HCX is stood up in your environment, you actually connect it to your vCenter and you connect it to your destination vCenter. HCX inside of its own internal database will create its own inventory tree that it references. So it will start to reference objects by ID name, by actual name. So as you can see on line 17 there, if Bilal wants to highlight that for me, we've got get HCX VM. And that's running inside of the new migration command itself. And the reason for that is because when we want to create a new HCX migration, we need to reference the virtual machine that's available within the vCenter, so from our CSV file, but actually we need to reference it with the attributes from within HCX itself because we need it from the HCX inventory. And the same also is apparent when we want to migrate to a folder within vCenter. So we can't reference the direct vCenter folder. So we can't do get VM folder as a command. We have to do the get HCX container. So then that's why we parameterize that side of it. So those are some of the problems that we had to overcome. From the other side, I don't think we're going to kind of talk about reverse migrations today in so much detail, but if we failed over our virtual machines into our VMware Cloud AWS, but in the future want to bring this back, essentially you can swap those parameters around for your source and destination site, run the same script again, it'll start synchronizing, it'll start to reverse that as well, which is one of the things that Bilal actually helped our customers achieve, as well as understanding the difference between scripts and how to architect that. And now I think I've been talking long enough as a gap fill for this to actually start creating the migrations for Bilal to show that to us in the interface.
Yeah, so let's have a look. It's created 3 migrations here. The VMs here are going, and it's going to start now going through all its required bits, right? And here, the latest version of HCX actually gives you a rundown of exactly what it's doing. And as you can see, because I've been testing it quite a bit, I can show you in my vCenter what it's doing. As you can see, it goes through various tasks here, and the user that I've got, the HCX.user, goes through and does quite a few bits. And what it does for a bulk migration is it uses vSphere replication. It starts a full sync, then it'll complete the full sync, and then it'll start maintaining the replication on a 2-hour schedule. The HCX team decided 2 hours was the right amount, where it wasn't going to be syncing too often, but also it'd be enough that the cutover time wouldn't be that large. Because once you cut over with the bulk, it will power the VM down at the source, do an offline sync for consistency, and then power it on at the destination. So they want that offline time to be as minimal as possible. And they thought 2 hours would be about right. And in my experience, it works really well, right? And you'll see it'll do it bit by bit, and it'll do the changes. And some people will say to me, oh, bulk migration is a bit slow sometimes. It's slow if you're doing a single VM. It's fast when you're doing 200, right? And that's the key thing here. Is bulk is all about the amount that you're doing. Things like vMotion and replicate assisted vMotion are more for your heavy hitter VMs that you don't really want to turn off. But there should be few and far between. All right. So we've done that. Replication's going, replication started. And then now that we've done that, the key thing we've got to do now is talk about the cutover in a bit more detail. Because as you can see here, we set it to be started 12 days. So if we look here, we can see it's going to start on the 18th, right? And then the window is going to finish on the 21st, right? And that's okay when you're just doing some syncing and stuff like that. But what happens when you actually want to cut it over, right? So you can script that as well. Now, I do reference some caution with this. Some customers like the idea, oh, I can script cutting over 200 VMs. Yes, you can, but I wouldn't, all right? Because I'm a firm believer of having some process and control. And the cutover is one of the things where the app owners are on edge, the business is on edge, and people are going to complain when things go wrong. So I actually say in general, do the cutovers manually yourself, especially in the first few instances. Make sure everything's running exactly how you want, and then you can automate it a bit more yourself, right? Because if you're cutting over 200 VMs, multiple app owners, they want to know what's going on. It's going to be hard to maintain what's going on. But if you cut over app A, get them to confirm it, they're happy, then cut over app B, and then cut over app C. It's very controlled and methodical, and people will like you for it. And it shows you have that level of control, which is what the app owners and the business are going to want from you. But with that caveat in place, we're going to talk about now how to cut it over. Now, essentially, we're using the same CSV, right? You can use the same CSV or a variation of it. So here I've got one VM that's already syncing, right? Test 4. And all the details in the CSV are here, but this script will only really cares about the VM name. And what it does is once it's imported and it goes through a for each, we have the date and time, 12 days from now to start. It's going to just do it now plus 2 minutes, right? So it's not going to be instant. It gives you a little bit of extra time in case you change your mind for whatever reason, but it's going to do that. And it checks for the VM name. It gets a HCX migration ID, which is unique to that VM, checks that it's in a waiting for cutover state, matches it to the name, and then it adjusts the time. So it still goes through a few checks just to make sure everything's spot on, right? As you can see here, let's have a look. It's waiting for the maintenance window to start, and the maintenance window to start is on the 22nd. So let's go here and let's run it.
Whilst Bilal's just entering his credentials there, so again, if we go back to kind of how the main line of the script is line 7, of course, so we're actually now getting the original migration that's in place. We actually have to reference it using its ID, which can sometimes cause a little bit of a problem because we know UIDs are not really human readable, and especially if we're scripting this and pulling it from a CSV file where we want to reference a particular virtual machine. So we're running that get HCX migration and we're finding, one, that it's in the state we expect. So that waiting state means that the synchronization's finished. It's waiting just to be cut over. We're matching the name, so we're using regex inside there to match. But the important part there is we're actually doing the select expand property ID, and then that's being passed to the main part of this command, which then is the get HCX migration ID. And then if we can see that the from that variable, if the count equals 1, so it means it exists, then we go to line 9, which is the second most important, and we're setting that migration, and we're basically, all we're doing there is saying, this existing migration, we want to now set the new start and date time. And because we have to specify that start and date time, unfortunately, we don't have parameters that say start it now. We basically have to be kind of a little bit common sense, which is starting 1, 2 minutes, 5 minutes time. And then Bilal's obviously just got a quick end there as well to disconnect his session, so it's not left hanging once it's gone ahead. And as you can see in his code view at the bottom there, essentially we get the same output that we got before when we created a migration, but this time it's just basically reconfirming all those details and settings for this migration. But if we look at the time and date, it's going to have changed slightly. And then if Bilal now takes over and goes back into the HCX interface, I'm sure we'll see it's updated there.
Yeah, if you see here, now it's on the 6th. And if we just wait, it will eventually just start cutting over, right? And that's really all there is to it. Migrations can be as simple as that, right? All that click next stuff for doing 200 VMs, you can literally put it all in CSV. And I've helped customers do it. I've seen the success I can have with it. And if your CSV's got a few white spaces in and stuff like that, you will get errors, and the errors are pretty commonplace. It'll tell you there's an error with your network mapping, and you can look at that. One issue is if you have multiple distributed port groups that are exactly the same name, for example, that causes an issue. So you're gonna have to change the name of one of them so you can help differentiate. Simple things like that can catch you out, but they're really simple to fix. And as you can see, it's starting to switch over, right?
So, Bilal, one of the things that I've noticed in this interface at the moment, which I'm a little bit of a picky person, we've actually, for each virtual machine, we've created a migration per virtual machine. Could you maybe just talk a little bit about why the script does it that way today, or what the features are to kind of alleviate that going forward?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So when myself and Dean worked on these scripts, the whole mobility group feature, which is now part of the HCX with the enterprise licensing, wasn't even a thing, right? So you wouldn't see multiple mobility groups, you just see multiple migrations, right? And that was the way it is, and that's where it was back then. Now you have the mobility group option, and a few customers have asked myself and Dean to look into scripting that, and we have published a script that will help you do that. So if you've got 50 VMs are all kind of the same, you want them to be all part of the same migration event, you can put them in their own mobility group and cut them over in one chunk, which makes life easier. The issue with that is that it needs enterprise licensing for HCX, and some customers don't have that because HCX advanced licensing comes with NSX Enterprise Plus as well, right? So it gets bundled in. So if you have the enterprise HCX add-on, you can use mobility groups, and we've got a script for that. If you don't, you can still do it like this, and you can still make it work like hundreds of customers have.
So really, all we're looking at with mobility groups is that logical grouping in the UI for when the migration happens. But in terms of the migration functionality itself, that stays the exact same. We're not realistically going to notice a difference there, whether we're using HCX Advanced or whether we're using HCX Enterprise.
Yeah, so I've got 3 VMs here, and you've got 3 separate drop downs. If you're using mobility groups, it'd all be under one drop down, right? And you could control the migration event just as one big chunk instead of 3 separate. That's the main benefit, and that definitely does have its benefits, right? You can have one app owner all part of one mobility group and another app owner as part of another, and it helps you do that logical separation.
Fantastic. So we've actually had a question come into the chat. I'll read the question out for everyone. Do you recommend using vRealize automation and action-based extensibility, or I presume also it could be vRealize orchestrator workflows, to run this type of migrations in a self-service fashion? So that's quite an interesting question. So thank you very much for that. As it stands today, there is no direct native integration with vRealize automation or the extensibility options with HCX. So you would have to use some type of scripting using PowerCLI or calling the APIs. In terms of do we recommend that for self-service capability? That really depends what it is you want to get out of here. If you want self-service capability for users to create a migration for their virtual machine to be able to move it from one data center to another and then kick that off, yes, that is a perfectly acceptable way to do that and build those workflows inside of VRA using one of the extensibility options. But typically in the field, we find that it's a core migration task force or migration team, or even the VI admins that are tasked with moving all these things, and they'll work with the application teams to move these as part of a change-driven process. So we're not really seeing customers today kind of use self-service on top of this in that type of way, but it is a perfectly reasonable thing as customers become okay with migrating VMs around data centers where they're best placed. A quick one, Bilal, you may be able to answer this. We may have to just unfortunately say wait for future features, but do you have any idea when guest customizations such as re-IP addressing will be exposed via PowerCLI?
Yes, it's not officially exposed via PowerCLI. I do know a few people have managed to make it work using the API. It's in there, but from a PowerCLI point of view, there's nothing directly available yet. It is still something that you have to do manually, I'm afraid.
So one of the things that you can do with our PowerCLI modules is they're all available on GitHub as an open source repository. So if you understand how to dive into the PowerCLI modules, you could edit that and add that functionality yourself, or open up an issue in GitHub. And the more noise we hear about this from our customer base, our end users, the more it's going to get pushed up the chain for that feature to be released. Will this cause file locking that will affect the backup processes such as Veeam? So, of course it will, is the answer, because we are doing disk-based changes to migrate and cut over that virtual machine. Especially during the cutover itself, it's doing a final synchronization and powering on the virtual machine. Bilal, what happens to the source virtual machine during a cutover?
Yeah, let's go through that, right? As you can see, this VM's now being powered on here. It created the VM, powered it on, same MAC address, everything. Now, if you look at legacy, what you'll see here, for a bulk migration, it keeps a VM in the inventory of legacy, powers it off, detaches the network, and then gives it this funky number here. This number is actually a Unix timestamp. You could put this timestamp in a Unix time converter on Google, and it'll tell you the exact date and time it was cut over, which is very good from an auditing point of view. It's also quite good from a rollback point of view. I've had some customers that, it's a web VM, it doesn't have that much change to it. And if they need to roll it back, they'll just power this copy on instead of having to replicate everything back, right? So it gives you that sense of security from a rollback point of view, and some app owners really like that.
Thank you, Bilal. I've just posted the GitHub link into the Zoom chat for everyone. And we've got 60,000 virtual machines that will take forever if this is not self-service. So as I mentioned, Joseph, with this, you can build the self-service capability yourself using VRA. We're talking about what we see happening in the field, say, of how customers are consuming this. If that's your use case, then again, there is an API with HCX that you can interact with to build that self-service capability. If you're using extensibility through VRA, you could use the PowerShell options within there to consume the module as well to interact with it. It's really up to you to build as you need to service your customers in the best way possible from that point of view.
Yeah, I was working with a customer that was trying to do a similar kind of thing, and they were basing it on the PowerCLI script. They can supply the VM name, the folder where they want it to go, the network mappings and everything, and then the script will run as part of that automation and do it all for them, right? So that's an option as well. But yeah, otherwise, as Dean said, you'd have to kind of build out your own kind of automation way to work with the API to do it for you.
So we're coming up to the top of our time for this VMware Code Connect. Thank you very much for all of your questions today. I'm really sorry if we've not had time to answer or respond to all of the questions or comments. We just really want to finish off on one single short link for you all. For those of you that are interested in getting hold of the scripts that we've created and the blog post that Bilal's wrote up on this and what he's done with the with these customers, you can go to vexpert.me/code-connect-HCX. If you're using the HTTP, that's without the S. It's just a redirector to take you to the V Musketeers blog post, and then it's searching on the tag category of HCX for you. For everyone coming to the end of this session, please do take the survey. We love the feedback. We also want to know what you want to see in the future at live events, not just VMworld, but other events that we have going as well. And from myself, thank you very much for everyone that's joined and stayed with us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.